Many updates just out. This one, most recent here, an append or prepend, since we're putting this at the beginning of the video. Potential development here that Republicans may be easing their demand to boost defense spending and instead just keeping it levels where the Biden administration had them. But the more interesting one is potentially, rather than paring back money from rental aid or SNAP food program benefits or work requirements for recipients of essentially government support, rather than potentially paring as much or any money from that back, Republicans are now potentially suggesting, hey, you know what? You know how we authorized $80 billion, mostly Democrats did? You know how y'all authorized $80 billion for thousands of new IRS agents? Since you haven't really used all that money yet, since, it's for multiple years, how about we pare that back by about 20%, or actually 25%, $20 billion. Let's pare it back by $20 billion. And maybe then we won't demand any cuts from your food programs or assistance programs. That's great news for anybody relying on support programs to try to get back on their feet or however. And it's also great news for millions of Americans who are like, the last thing we want is another call from the IRS. I don't even want another letter from the and the rest. Anyway, let's get into some of the other updates, but this is a breaking one that in editing came out, and that's a pretty big flip right here, especially since everybody's been caught up in work requirements, and then the flip is now This is great. This is great. I think this weekend will be very fruitful, but never have too much hope for Congress. They don't work as hard as us Americans. They're taking off today because you got to have 4 days off. A 3-day weekend isn't enough. Well, we've got another debt ceiling update. You've got a Fitch ratings agency complaining that we're going to have to lower the United States' credit standards because, well, we're getting so close to the brink again. This is exactly what happened back in 2011 when our credit rating got reduced, leading up to the debt ceiling crisis and this partial government shutdown we got with TSA agents not getting paid and federal parks shutting down. Well, there was a lot of volatility in the stock market. Everything ended up just fine when they passed the bill. It's just brinksmanship and political nonsense, but it's important to know what the latest updates are because it's worth remembering the Treasury Department did send out notices to United States departments asking them to basically say what's the latest they could start taking payments from the Treasury. In other words, how long could they make their existing budget go without getting another payment? The Treasury Department is preparing to basically fund the government with pennies by the day, which is pretty wild because if we do strike a deal this weekend, which is what rumors are circulating around that the framework for a deal could be in place this weekend, we do have Memorial Day on Monday where the stock market will be closed, but then we'll be following up with really we'll be going into June next week already, and the potential start of the X date when the Treasury Department will run out of cash is June 1st. At least per Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, and basically a Biden admin puppet at this point. Goldman Sachs and many on Wall Street think the X date is closer to the 6th through the 12th, and then the Treasury does get an influx of cash around the 15th from tax collections. But what's very important is that if we have the framework for a deal this weekend and we end up passing a deal, then the market's going to have a big negative catalyst behind it. This is very exciting. Now, here are the latest updates from McCarthy. McCarthy just spoke with reporters just minutes ago. He said that there are some issues still outstanding on a deal and that negotiators worked well past midnight. Oh my gosh, they worked past midnight. I feel like any entrepreneur or hard worker watching this has had a long night before. It's like not a big deal. But anyway, what is interesting is McCarthy says, quote, a couple of issues remain. He says, quote, not everyone will be happy with the current deal. McCarthy told his negotiators to work 24/7 on the issue. This is partly political because he's trying to contrast to Joe Biden, suggesting, Joe Biden's not taking it as seriously. But anyway, he says there are still some outstanding issues. However, he's not worried about the rating or a potential re-rating from Fitch. And ultimately, it seems like the framework for a deal is in place. Now, that's pretty exciting. That means we're getting really, really close to getting this deal done, which is fantastic. It is an indication that we are. I don't know how well the stock market is positioned for the deal getting done because there's so much fear. There's so much of a belief that we are going to default because a lot of people are suggesting that we need to default, which is pretty remarkable because that's probably the worst thing we would expect from our government is actually to see a default. But this is the latest from McCarthy. If we jump on over to WAPO, they seem to be pretty resilient in their coverage here. And their latest coverage talks about Democrats voicing frustrations over Biden's approach to dealing with Republicans, worrying that their priorities aren't being championed enough and that Biden isn't forceful enough. Now, this is really interesting because on one hand, you have McCarthy saying, Biden's not negotiating enough. And now you have some Democrats going, Biden's not negotiating enough. But that's actually a sign that Biden's probably trying to reach a realistic middle ground. When you reach a realistic middle ground, the people on the far left and the far right are going to be pissed. So let's see here. House is encouraging Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, to attend meetings to see how basically well Biden is negotiating. White House is keeping negotiations behind closed doors. It's my expectations that if Republicans continue to play games with the American economy, threaten default, and drive us into a very dangerous situation, Jeffrey says, that we'll hear from the administration, if not the president himself. But so far they haven't. That's an interesting argument. They're basically saying, yeah, we're not hearing much of what's going on, but since it's not bad news, maybe no news is good news. Okay. Biden has not held a public event regarding negotiations since late Sunday. And obviously today's Thursday. He did comment on the negotiations while in Japan. You've heard multiple times from the president over the weekend, but beyond that, it's been relatively quiet, relatively silent, people say. Democrats on Capitol Hill want the president to frame Republicans as extreme hostage takers of the debt limit. When the reality is most Republicans are trying to make the argument that, hey, like, if we can't negotiate the debt now, like, when are we ever going to negotiate spending and budget cuts? So, fascinating. In a sign that advisors want to escalate the debate, the White House on Wednesday afternoon accused Republicans of trying to actively harm their own constituents. I mean, yeah, but you hear this kind of nonsense political jargon all the time. If you're a Republican, every Democrat's trying to kill you and the economy. If you're a Democrat, every Republican's trying to do exactly the same thing. It's wild. But anyway, look, I think overall, this is all trending towards very good news, not bad news. So I'm happy about this. Looking at some other Capitol Hill coverage, we could go to the Hill or Politico. Let's see here. So we've got a debt ceiling deal appears to be coming in close. This is a Politico piece that just came out about 20 minutes ago. With 7 days until the earliest possible Fed default, the deal appears to be getting closer. Multiple people close to the talks told Politico that Republicans and the White House are closing the gap on spending levels, critical part of negotiations. Republicans are eager to show real progress before members hit the road on Thursday for Memorial Day weekend, even if negotiations fall short of a deal. Despite the movement, one person briefed on negotiations say the two sides are still tens of billions of dollars apart. Well, if I remember anything from the days of COVID, tens of billions of dollars on an annual budget for the entire United States government is actually really small. Republicans are, I know that sounds crazy, but it's like a rounding error. Republicans are eager to show real progress. Okay, we already read that. I think we made some progress. Fine. Seems to me that there's a resolution that involves a spending freeze to certain whatever. Together, progress is being made on 2 of the 4 pillars on a deal laid out. Spending caps and energy permitting basically have reached a deal. The required pillars left to negotiate are tightened work requirements for food aid recipients. That's really been slowing down progress in negotiations, and the clawing back of unspent COVID dollars. So, I mean, these are like, you know, $30 to $50 billion discussions here. This, to me, this is actually very optimistic. This is a sign that we probably have a deal in place right now. If we needed to have a deal done right now, we could. Now it's just the leftover junk that needs to be cleaned out. You've got an update here 11 minutes ago. Democrats seek unlikely debt ceiling savior from the Hill, Mitch McConnell. What? These headlines are just ridiculous. Anyway, with time running short and the danger of the national default growing, Democrats are hoping an unlikely savior will come to the rescue. Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Democratic lawmakers say McConnell and other Republicans are fooling themselves if they think McCarthy is in a position to reach a debt deal with Biden. They believe McCarthy is under tremendous pressure to not agree to any deal Democrats would accept because the House rules allow for one disappointed conservative to offer a motion to vacate the Speaker's chair, basically to fire him. Senate Republicans are putting their heads in the sand if they think that extremists in their party will have a change of heart. If McCarthy is forced to choose between holding power or taking us closer to default, we know he's going to move us closer to default. Yikes. So now they're trying to get McConnell to negotiate a deal with the, quote, reasonable Republicans. Oh, dear. McConnell, I would have never been... I mean, this is wild. They're now calling McConnell a reasonable Republican. Which maybe he is. Maybe he's changed. I just think anybody who remembers the COVID days is so frustrated by Pelosi and McConnell. We were so, like, shell-shocked by hearing those names. It's politics. They don't want to blame it on the speaker, blah, blah, blah. Conservative senators caught off guard when McConnell proposed that Democrats could move legislation without a GOP filibuster to raise the debt ceiling in 2021. And in an interview with the Wall Street Journal last week, he agreed that McCarthy would be the point person in negotiations, but that he would also be involved, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, there's your debt ceiling update. And quite frankly, it sounds very good. I'm very happy about that. And I'm very happy to also announce to you that June 1st is just around the corner. It's just about 5-6 days away here from not only the AI sector's releasing, but then a big increase in the price, since all of the value will be present now. So we're still on pre-sale for the How to Make More Money and Get SH19 Done Faster course. Obviously, you can check out the other programs as well, bundle them up. If you want to email us for a bundle coupon code, send it to staff@meetkevin.com for the fastest reply. Staff@meetkevin.com.